Trustees meeting. If I could have everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will begin with our first period of public comment. If you're interested in making public comment, please come up to one of the empty chairs. We'll start on the right-hand side and just work down and cycle. When you are ready to speak, you'll click the little microphone button, and please state your full name for the record. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And yeah, off we go.
I think maybe it was hard for some to hear you. If you could just repeat that and then move the microphone a little closer.
Absolutely. Okay, this is our first period of public comment. If you're interested in making public comment, please come up to one of the vacated seats. To turn your microphone on, you will click the microphone button and it'll turn from red to green. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and it's important for you to state your full name at the beginning of your comment.
And then do I push the button?
It's just a little microphone. Oh.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Gayleen Drinkett, and I guess that this is the best place for me to express my concerns of what I saw yesterday at the library. When I had drove up with my granddaughter, there were several kids outside in the front, and before I even got out of my car, they were cussing and shoving each other and blah, 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 and I'm like, okay, they're just middle school kids, whatever. Get out. I got my granddaughter out, and they ran into the library. So I'm like, okay, they're probably going to calm down or whatever. Not the case. When I went in there, it was chaos. It was not the library I am used to going to with starting from my children on up to my grandchildren. It was one librarian. She was trying to keep as much order as she could by herself because the other one was on the break. And I couldn't believe what I saw. And I don't want to go into too much because I only have 3 minutes, but it was to the point, it was to the level that it looked pretty comfortable of their behavior, that this must have been going on for quite some time, for a long period of time to be allowed to do what they were doing. We had kids on the table yelling, screaming, throwing boxes at each other. Kids were running around. There were some playing grabby pants over there in the corner. I was like, what is going on? So my granddaughter had ran ahead of me, so she went into the kids' place, and I sat down, and I even on the way over there told some kids, okay, be quiet, you're in the library. And I could see the librarian trying to get some order back, and they were not listening. So I called the police because it was so out of control. I did. And they came in they did a sweep. They did tell some kids to be quiet. The kids were starting to argue with them. And then they ended up leaving. And I'm watching this, I'm going, oh my gosh. And then the kids started up again. So I called one of the officers that was there, and he said, we couldn't make anyone leave unless the staff said it was okay for us to go ahead and tell them to leave, the kids that were there that was creating the chaos. I mean, they had pretty much taken over the place. There was a few elderly there. There was someone trying to study. I was so it was just not the library that I was used to. So as I was leaving, and when the one librarian came off of her break, it was like she's making excuses on, well, it's a public place, and they need a place to go, and they're here until the parents pick them up. And I'm just like, wow. It was just disheartening to see what has happened to the library. And what I mean by it must be for some time, because unless it's been allowed and tolerated, behaviors will just keep escalating unless you get control of the behaviors. And so, anyway, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's disheartening. So, I'm sorry to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
But before our next public comment, this is Jeff Weed for the record from the District Attorney's Office. I just wanted to indicate that there were a number of written public comments that were submitted to the Clerk Treasurer's Office. Those have been included in the record. Copies have been provided to the members of the board and available to the public today. So just for the record, those are received and are part of this record.
And did you have plans of reading them into the record today?
I was not going to read them into the record. Like I said, they're provided, they're part of the record, and they're available for anyone who wishes to read them or anything like that.
Will copies be available when the packet is published after the meeting, along with the minutes?
Pam Moore, for the record, the packet that's posted on our website includes them.
Includes all of these comments from
Yes.
the emails?
Yes.
Thank you, Pam.
My name is Marilyn Hedges Hiller, and I've been using the Churchill County Library for the last 17 years. I have served on the Churchill Library Association and also on the Churchill County Library Board of Trustees. I started working with Carol Lloyd about 4 months after she arrived, and then continuously for the next 9 years. I watched the video of the last meeting. CL comes in here with a good evaluation, and then Kelly throws a monkey wrench into things and tries to get you to change your opinion. And I'm asking you to stand by your original opinion. Kelly just gave you general allegations, no specifics, no nothing except complaint, complaint, complaint. I had a complaint about hoopla. I know other people shared it. I went and talked to CL, and it was resolved. I think that's what you do as an adult. You talk face to face with the person you have a complaint with. You don't go behind their back. This is serious business because you're talking about her professional reputation and her livelihood. I know it's tough because CL is following in Carol's footsteps, and Carol was a fabulous and well-liked librarian. That's a very high standard that she has to meet. If she were following in the footsteps behind the other prior librarian, you would have a very different view of her. Even Carol had a rocky start in the beginning. Things were not perfect for her either. She had to learn the ins and outs of this county, of the budget, and she had complaints too. So this is not new. I want to say that CL, of course, is not Carol's clone. She's a unique personality, just like the rest of us. And she does bring strengths that I have personally experienced at the library. She is knowledgeable, helpful, pleasant, and available. She actually has done 2 things that have impacted me, which are the Wow Brary newsletter. I always have trouble saying that, which I've always wondered at the library, how do I find out about new books and things? So finally, it's easy. She also started a monthly book club that I participate in. So I've had direct experience of some of the positives of CL, and I'm really just here to ask the board to stand by its original opinion. There's nothing that happened between March and April except Kelly found complaints. So I think it's important that we trust, that I'm able to trust you to be fair. And I think CL probably thinks the same thing, since she got the evaluation before she came here. And then she's blindsided So all I can ask you to do is do your job. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
My name is Reed Sewell. I don't live in Fallon, but I am a patron and have been for 12 years of the Fallon Library. I have made a statement to Pam Moore, and she said that she would memo each one of you, but I have one additional statement that was not included in my statement to Pam Moore. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I noticed in the new books section in the library when I walked in that all I saw was female authors in the fiction section of the new books. And I was a little bit concerned, but I didn't say anything to anybody, and I noticed the next time I went in, which was probably about 10 days later, I counted the books. There were 100 new fiction books. There were 95 female authors and 5 male authors. And I happen to read male authors because I read detective and mystery novels. So I decided that I would ask the director what the problem was. And when I went into her office, the door was open, and she asked me if she could help me. And I said, I just have a little problem that maybe you could explain to me. I said, I noticed that there's a preponderance, I said, it's of female authors in the fiction section. Is there some kind of problem? And she explained to me that she ordered male authors, but they never seemed to come in. And I thought to myself, you mean the female authors, when she orders them, the books come in, but the male authors don't? So I came very close to going into the men's room and looking in the mirror and seeing if my face really registered that kind of stupidity. So I didn't feel that was an adequate answer. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell.
And by the way, I have a witness to that conversation in case there's any problem with that, the truthfulness of that conversation.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make public comment during this first period?
No, if you've provided public
I
comment,
just have a question. I
then,
just have a question.
then the time for public comment is over.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Even if a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
We do have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. Should you like to stay around?
Hello, I'm Karen Colt. A lot of you probably knew my dad, John. Lifetime, it's Kieran, lifetime community member here. He was on the board forever. I lived my whole life here, and I'm just flabbergasted in what's going on. I'm like, what the heck? We need to give her an opportunity here. She has not been here this long. I thought we were a loving, kind community, and if there are situations that people don't agree with, maybe she can learn from that and move on. 1 year is not a long time. We need to give these people time to improve, suggest what they can do in that instance and move on from there. I feel she's very qualified. She worked in Florida, New Jersey. You probably know her background. She has 12 years' experience. What's going to happen when we get a new person in her position that doesn't have all that? Unless you have someone in your mind already. I'm not sure. I'd like to mention 3 prominent points. First of all, I'm going to piggyback on, I've been there a few times. Today I was there. I saw kids, parents, happy, smiling. I interviewed them a little bit. I said, what are you doing? We're doing art activities. We're reading books. It was amazing. As a teacher, I would go there every day with my kids. I would. And they were reading. They were doing games. They were interacting with each other. I think it was a wonderful experience. Now, with the situation of middle schoolers, that is a very tough situation. Maybe we can get some county resources there. I do think that there should be a police officer over there. They go to the schools. Why can't they go there and see what's happening? Maybe she needs some support. You can't expect her to do everything with 1 or 2 people there. We need support. We need compassion. We need kindness. That's what our community is all about. So next, I just want to address the AAUW involvement she's had. I saw in the newspaper she doesn't get along with others. She doesn't do community service. She doesn't do this. Well, I'd like to tell you a few positive things she's done. So she goes to our AAUW meetings, and she was one of our guest speakers. She gave us new ideas, technology, monthly calendar events, book clubs, sites to visit, and free books. And everyone was amazed. It was just wonderful. That was number 1. Number 2, I've attended a few of her book clubs. There's variety of theme books. Sure, there's women authors, but that's probably because it was Women Monthly Day or month. There was probably some male month. This time when I went in, there was all about firefighters and fires. So she does do thematic themes very effectively. And I think it was a wonderful atmosphere with everyone contributing in the library when I've gone in the past, looking at those books. And
I would
explain-
I would just advise at this point that the 3 minutes is up. I'll submit
Okay.
that to the chair, but I would just
Yes.
advise on that.
Okay. Next one is just,
Karen,
I guess I can't do anything else. Bye-bye.
We'll have a second period of public comment.
Well, I might not be able to be here because I have another meeting to attend, but I just hope in the bottom of your heart you support our librarian.
Is there anyone else interested in making public comment during this period? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to roll call of members.
Tara Price Gritzmucker.
Jessica Rowe.
Ashley McGarity.
Kelly Kelly.
Joe Pederuti.
And could we have verification of the posting of the agenda?
Pam Moore, for the record, the revised agenda was posted on May 3rd between the hours of 2 and 5 at all of the locations listed on the agenda in accordance with statutes.
May I ask who composed the agenda?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Who composed the agenda?
It was through the county, through the district attorney's office, and through the clerk's office, in association with the board chair, put this together and published it.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to agenda item 6, consideration and possible action regarding the approval of the agenda as submitted or revised.
Kelly, I have to take a, I cannot vote in favor of this agenda, and I just want to tell you up front why. I think the wording here is egregious. I think that we've done a disservice to the library, to CL. I have to vote against it just because of the wording. And we've never done this with the prior director. As a matter of fact, you took issue with the way she had the agenda worded last month, and when I looked back at the ones that Carol wrote, they were worded the exact same way. And so I'm not sure why you took issue with all of that, but I can't vote in favor of this, besides the fact that we're not here to consider appointments today. We have 2 matters of old business and 1 matter of new business. So that's why I asked who wrote this agenda, because I would have thought that it would have been done more in line with what we normally do. So would you like to speak to that, seeing as how you had a hand in it?
Yes, so I will say that last meeting, when I talked about the agenda item and how it was written, that was as a result of being advised by the district attorney's office. And so I can't speak to past agendas and that conversation, but that was as a result of being advised by the county's legal representation.
But you specifically said that it should have been worded differently, and you disagreed with CL when she said that's how it was written in the past. Now, if you don't remember how they were written, I have copies of the last one that Carol wrote, and I'd be happy to submit it for the record so that maybe jog your memory a little bit.
To be clear, I did not disagree about the way that previous agendas had been written.
No, you disagreed with last month.
All I did was say that because of the way it was written, after having heard from our district attorney representation, that we were limited in what we could take action on. And I don't know if Jeff Weed would like to weigh in any further on that, but it was through the advisement of the DA's office that I made that statement.
So you came in thinking that we were going to take a termination action when all we had to do was approve her annual evaluation.
Well, no.
Because we wouldn't have had to take any action if we weren't going to consider a termination. We could have just voted on her approval, approving her evaluation.
It would have been within our purview, based on the information that I received from the district attorney's office, to take a vote on approval of the evaluation.
And why would you have sought the approval of the district attorney's office? It was a matter of course. We've done this every year for the past years that you and I have sat on this board.
I received the information from the
Okay,
DA's
here we go.
office.
You're not going to answer my question, I can tell. You want to take a vote on this agenda? Because I'm happy to vote against it right now.
That's fine. I will note that the language for item A is pulled from statute, and so that's where that language comes from.
And it didn't have to be there, as I said.
Is there any further discussion of the agenda as presented? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Would you prefer to call for a motion to reject?
I'm a little puzzled what to do at this juncture. We have the ability to revise the agenda. We can pass the agenda as submitted or revised. In the absence of an agenda, I frankly don't know what that looks like.
I'm sure the district, assistant district attorney can guide you, seems like has been happening.
To weigh in just briefly, what would it look like to revise in such a way that you would then feel it was more in keeping with what you had asked for at the last meeting, Joe? So that we could, my guess is that it is, or Jeff?
I could weigh in. I mean, this agenda item is primarily there to allow for if an agenda item wants to be taken off, right? If someone's waiting, let's say, for example, there's 15 things on the agenda and someone's waiting for item 15 and the board has decided we're not going to talk about item 15. It's on there to say, okay, we're not going to address item 15 and so we've revised it. You can't change the wording, you can't change things like that. And so I don't think the going forward of today's meeting is contingent on an approval of the board to approve the agenda. I think it's more of a, hey, is there anything that needs to be revised here? And so if there's not a motion, I think you can move past that one. And I don't think it's contingent on the approval of the board to continue through the agenda items.
So you're of the opinion, just to make sure I understand, that if we don't approve our agenda, we can still move forward with a meeting that doesn't have an unapproved agenda. Is that what you're telling us? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the going forward of the meeting is not, like I said, this agenda item is for, hey, is there anything we want to pull from the meeting? And so if not, let's approve it and go forward. If not, we'll pull it and then we'll approve the revised agenda. If there's no revised agenda, I think that the board can proceed with the agenda items.
Well, then I would prefer to have it pulled, quite honestly. So I would motion that we remove 7.A from the agenda.
And I can provide some information. I was planning on providing it when we got to agenda item A. I can provide it now. So this agenda item is agendized to allow the board to perform any number of things, whether it's from approval, right, of the current evaluation, up to and including termination. The agenda item provides that. In order for the board to take action on that today or to discuss all that today, certain notifications need to happen. For this specific instance, it's the library director, right? Library director needs to be noticed both, A, that there's going to be, a discussion of professional competence, which Chris Spross provided that notification last week. She also needs to be notified that there could potentially be administrative action taken. She was not provided that notice. And so while it's agendized this way, this board cannot take administrative action today. And that would be the up to and including termination type of language. She has been notified for next week's meeting. And so my suggestion to the board today, or my recommendation to the board, not suggestion, would be to treat this meeting as an information gathering meeting. There have been a number of public comments presented today. There's been a number of public comments presented, written public comment that have been provided, and there's a lot of information that's been presented today. And so my recommendation is to treat this meeting today as an information gathering meeting. And so I think if you guys skip past A, that would be fine. I think that would be something you could do. It would be agendized on next week's regular board meeting. Notice has been provided. And so for today's meeting, I think the point might be moot, whether it's on there or not. Because my recommendation would be, we're not going to do discussion or action taken on that specific item. And so that would be my recommendation today. And so, again, whether it's on there or not, my recommendation would be, we can move past that
Actually,
item.
It's not moot, though, Jeff. That's the problem.
Well, I'm talking about just for this specific issue of whether it's going to be on the agenda or not today. I don't mean in the grand scheme of things. Please don't misunderstand me on that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, but it's just that reputations have already been destroyed between the Fallon Post news article and the wording of this agenda. This is out in the public.
Yeah.
And now it's made to look like, because we never used this language before to review a library director's performance evaluation, it just immediately implies that there's an issue. And that's not right. I'm sorry. That's wrong. We're supposed to be advocates for the library and for the library system and for the lady that we chose. She was your choice to begin with. Shame on you.
And Joe, at this point, I would advise again, I don't think there should be discussion or action taken on this. We're not in the agenda item. We're not there. The other thing I was going to address was, I think last time, Joe, I think you had mentioned, hey, can we hold a closed session? Or was there some sort of discussion about that? I don't remember exactly how it happened.
Yeah, I remember asking about that.
And so I just wanted to reiterate that, generally, boards, when they're talking about the character or professional competency, can hold closed sessions. When you have a position, and the statute reads, when you discuss these things for a person who serves at the pleasure of a public body, such as this, and they're kind of the head of that department, which we have here as a library director, the law prohibits a closed session for that. And so I know that was a question that was raised last time. I answered
Yeah.
it just briefly.
Thank you.
I just want to let you know I looked further into it, and so that's why the meetings happen this way, not in closed session. But I also wanted to put that on the record for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I did follow up and read that section as well, I saw
Okay.
that. Thank you.
And so again, if the board wants to, pull A, and again, it'll be agendized at the meeting next week, notification has been provided. But if they want to pull A today, and you could still address B and C if the board wanted to talk about those. But again, my recommendation would be, this is an information gathering meeting for you guys. I think last week, a member of the board said that they didn't feel comfortable going because they didn't have enough information, something like that. And so I think it'd be appropriate today to gather the information, and then, again, it'll be agendized, notices have been provided for next week's regular meeting.
Joe, were you making a motion to strike 7A from the agenda and then move forward with its approval?
Your call, Madam Chair. Your show. I'm sorry, but I told you I was really upset with you, and so this is the outcome. If you want to talk about it, I've got plenty of things to discuss. So let's talk about it, so then we can get this stuff out more into the public domain. Let's go.
Well, as District Attorney Weed identified, we are not in a position to deliberate or discuss at this meeting without putting ourselves in a position, a gray area with open meeting law, or potentially having an adverse impact on compliance with that.
Actually, that's not what he said. He said we couldn't take any action on it, but that doesn't mean that we can't discuss it.
No,
If we can't discuss it, then, yeah, might as well pull it.
Yeah, my advice would be not to discuss it either. That
Okay,
if we're
then fine.
going to tread into that world of, hey, we're going to discuss this, then I think we should, again, notice has been provided for next week meeting. It can be agendized there, and then it can be discussed there. Again, public comment, those kind of things, those can all come before the board. But regarding discussion, deliberation, or action, I would advise keep that at 0 today, and then move on to the other agenda items.
Then I will make the motion to revise the agenda to remove 7A and proceed with 7B and 7C.
We have a motion to revise the agenda to remove item 7A. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the revised agenda. All in favor, please indicate with an aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. And moving on to item 7B, consideration and possible action, update on the filled and unfilled library employee positions, including steps and approval for recruitment and hiring of unfilled positions. Is there any information to be shared with the board?
The board can discuss this. I know Chris Ross from the HR is here. If he has some information regarding, what the current status of the, library staff positions are, that may be an appropriate place to start.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Members of the board, Chris Ross, Churchill County Assistant County Manager and HR Director. So the current staffing at the library, just to give you an idea of positions that have been vacated over the last several months. So Diane Wargo, her librarian position, she left at the beginning of February. Jennifer Taylor, she was a page, she left March 6th. At the last meeting, you heard from Joe Salzman, the IT librarian. He left to take another position. Ashley Brown had tendered her resignation, and her last day is tomorrow. And then we had one more librarian give notice several days ago, give her 2 weeks' notice. And so what remains at the library right now in terms of positions is there's one librarian, there's one part-time page, and then a newly hired part-time page starts tomorrow. So right now, aside from the director herself, there are 3 positions at the at the library. Yeah, that's what we have.
So I just wanted to point out for the record, Chris, that Diane had retired. She had her retirement notice submitted. Makes it sound like there was a run on staffing, when in fact, you had told us, or we were told by the county that positions were frozen. We couldn't fill Diane's. I guess we maybe just filled the page with the newest one that came. But this is a terrible quandary that we're in. We don't have the staffing. I don't know how we're going to pull this off with 2 part-timers and a library director. And budget cuts have fed into all of this. Thank you very much.
Well, as far as Diane's position, you're correct. And we were in the process of lining out interviews when the budget cut information came, was passed down to us. As far as the other 3 positions, those happened after the information from the budget cuts was already available. So I have received information that we can go ahead and proceed and reinstate the recruitment for Diane's position. As far as the other 3 that have been recently vacated, I don't have any information on when we can proceed with those.
CL, do we have any interviews in the pipeline?
There are no interviews in the pipeline as of yet. I do want to make a couple of corrections to those statements. Jennifer Taylor resigned on April the 6th, not March the 6th, and she stayed additional time from her original resignation that she had submitted to me because she knew that I was going out of town and she did not want to leave us in a crunch. She was listed as one of the other 3, which is not actually accurate since we just filled a paged position.
I was merely just listing the positions that had been vacated. And you are correct, I apologize. I've got April 4th, or April 6th written down here as well.
So Chris, we're being given authorization to fill 1 position out of 4.
It's all I have authorization for right now, and it's not my authorization. I'm just the vehicle that does the posting and setting up interviews and things like that, so.
So who do I take my complaint to? Your boss, the county commissioners? I mean, how do we shake more money out of this tree?
It's going to have to be the county commissioners. Ultimately, the county commissioners are the ones that are responsible for approving the budget.
You realize that we haven't seen an adulterated version of our budget lately, right? The county's been working on it.
Yes, I mean, we
Okay.
have a tentative budget, and the budget is scheduled. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I believe it's
and right now,
scheduled for.
I'd caution talking too much about the budget at this point, because
Sorry,
it's not
okay.
agendized that way. It's
No,
just
sorry, you're
agendized to
right.
talk about the positions.
So we had 6.3 employees at one point when CL did the last staffing hours analysis for us before we lost some of these people. So, and we're open 55 hours a week, right? I think you were here when we talked about that last month, right? So I'm still puzzled as to how we can carry 55 hours a week with a schedule with half the number of people. I don't see how we're going to do it. And I know that's not your issue to resolve. I think that's our issue as a board, along with the library director, but if we don't have permission to fill any more positions, it doesn't leave this board with very many choices. We can't ask CL to work 55 hours a week. You know what I mean? And we need 2 people on at all times. I don't see how we're going to do it. I don't know. Anyone else have feelings on this? That's what we're here to talk about this, right? I'm not straying too far away?
No,
Okay.
the agenda can be taken in any order or combined, right? And so we were on Agenda
number
item 7B,
two,
I think you
library
could talk about
staffing.
B and C together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking about library staffing. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and then
true.
C
The
is
next one
the hours. And
Okay.
so, and again, it's agendized for the board to kind of talk about and take whatever direction the board wants to on that.
Before we leave the agenda item of the positions, one of the questions that we had in the last meeting was some of the tools that the county had at their disposal to lend some support to the library. And I did get a chance to talk to Jim about it, but you're here and you might be able to give me perspective on not just what the county can do, but what the county is able and willing to do in a situation like this. And so things like overtime, things like tasking employees of the county from other entities to see if they want to pick up extra hours. You might already have some employees in your hopper that you could task our way while we try to solve this problem, because we're going to have this crunch soon, and we're going to have to keep the lights on soon. Do you have any ways that you can think of that you would prefer in the interim to help us temp this out while we solve the bigger problem?
So the difficult part is the part-time employee and the overtime. So the library's got 2 part-time employees and 1 full-time employee. Overtime or comp time obviously is something that would be available to a full-time employee. When you start looking at part-time hours, once you exceed a certain number of hours, it takes you out of the classification for being part-time. And then there is additional costs in terms of benefits that need to be applied. And so that's always a juggling act. And I know CL and HR have had conversations on how far you can push that boundary to get to the point to maximize those hours before it triggers another set of benefits. In terms of other departments, you know, everybody's in the same boat. They're all going through the same budget cuts. And a lot of them also, if you look at something like the museum, I've had the same conversation with the museum director as far as how far those boundaries can be pushed before an employee gets into the next classification of benefits. And so I think there may be some employees out there that may want to work some overtime. The problem becomes are they the right people to work in the library? Just because you have somebody that says, yes, I'm willing to work the overtime, it may not be the right fit for somebody to work in the library. It's a special talent to work in the library, and you can't just take somebody that runs a motor grader and say, I'm going to put you in the library because you want some overtime. So I think things like that can be explored, but we have to be very careful when it comes to the hours. And again, everybody's kind of going through the same crunch when it comes to the budget cuts.
I appreciate it, Chris. That was kind of the impression I was getting after my conversation, but I felt that for the record, it was better coming from you. The other follow-up question to that would be, is there a mechanism for temping? Some sort of a temp hire that you could put out in the short term like this, with the understanding that this was temporary and not a permanent county employee, that we could move more quickly, or an emergency hire system?
I think it's certainly something that we can look at. I'll be honest, I haven't. But I can certainly take feedback from the board and see if there's any sort of I don't want to say manpower, but something to that effect that may be able to come in and be able to fill some of those spots. I'd certainly be happy to take that information, get together with CL, and see if there's anything that we can make work.
Thank you. I have a feeling that the next question about hours is also going to be attendant on what we can do with the human power situation that we've got going on. So I appreciate it.
Understood.
So do we have any discussion about steps and approval for recruitment, hiring of unfilled positions? Have you ladies given it any thought?
It sounds to me, Joe, like there are some things that need to be answered, but at least the first step of opening up that adult librarian services, let's start the hiring process and move as quickly as we can with that one. And then the rest of these, it sounds like there's a willingness to explore the options, but we don't have the answers yet, so we're going to need to take it up in the next meeting.
So Chris, when can we start interviewing for that senior librarian position?
Well, so the interviews that were set up for the vacated position back in February, it's been probably 4 weeks or so, 4 weeks. We could reach out to those people. They were all from out of state. So we could reach out to those people and see if they would still be interested in interviewing if they haven't taken another job. If that pool is greatly reduced because people have taken other jobs or they're not interested anymore, then we would likely have to start the recruitment process all over again with a posting and then receiving applications and doing the subject matter expert review and that sort of thing.
So technically, it could start as quickly as tomorrow, right?
It could. I mean, the calls can be made to see if people are available, yes.
And the posting could go up tomorrow as well, right?
And the posting could go up tomorrow, yes.
Good. That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Since it seems like there's additional information that needs to be gathered, would you be available to have some answers or some strategies at the meeting that's scheduled next week?
I can give you options, but I don't feel right about giving you strategies. Strategies are a responsibility of this board. I could say, you know, we have found a half a dozen people that would be willing to put in some time at the library, but I'm uncomfortable giving any sort of strategies to this board. And I'd be happy to see if I can find some people that would be willing to do that.
Is it reasonable for you to also look into some sort of emergency or temp hire apparatus that could be employed?
So the way the county works specifically, and I'm going to use manpower as an example because that's kind of what I'm familiar with, manpower does not go through human resources. It goes through the department. So every department is responsible for reaching out to manpower to try to fill their needs. What I can do is get verification that that is something that we should be doing, and then certainly give that information to CL to follow up with. But that's been, Jeff, unless I'm wrong, that's been our policy within the county to have it done within the department.
That seems like that's something that could be pretty nimble then too.
CL, are you okay with getting in touch with manpower?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other discussion of agenda item B, 7B, consideration and possible action on update on the filled and unfilled library employee positions, including steps and approval for recruitment and hiring of unfilled positions? One final question. Do we have any idea, I know that that CL has filed the waivers for the gaps on the unfilled positions, at least for two, the library assistant and the third, the IT librarian position. I'm guessing you have already for the other position that Chris mentioned. Do we have an idea about timeline for those?
The position review board's made up of 4 people. It's been I don't want to say a struggle, but I also don't want to try to call a meeting every single time we get a waiver. So I've kind of, gotten 2 or 3 together and then try to pull the board together. So I can reach out to the board and see what their availability is and work through that. And again, I can pull the board together. I can present the waiver, and obviously CL will be there as well. But there's no guarantee what kind of position the board's going to take. That's going to be up to CL and how the board feels about that. So I'll see what I can pull together as far as putting a meeting together.
Thank you very much. Any further board discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 7C, consideration and possible action, update on library schedule and hours, including action to ensure the library maintains the current schedule and hours, or action to reduce or modify the library hours and schedule. I'll open it up for board discussion.
I guess I can just restate my concern that I don't see how we can stay open 55 hours a week. It's just, with not even 2 full people. I mean, the pages, I don't think, maybe they're 4 hours a day, but I don't know, I don't know, what do you guys think?
Given the most recent resignation, I think we are in a situation where, at least for a period of time, we may need to consider doing a reduction for a temporary amount of time. It was difficult, and this came onto our agenda last time because it is difficult to staff with the number, and it sounds like it's going to become rapidly more difficult. It's become a different problem. So, do you have a plan that you would like to put in place, knowing what you know?
Well, as I mentioned at the last meeting, I would rather maintain some of our evening and our Saturday hours, because I think that that's important for the community. Not everybody can get there during 9 to 5, so I don't think that it makes sense to go to those hours.
Could you move that a little closer?
I'm sorry. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I think it's important to maintain at least some of our evening and Saturday hours, as not everybody can get to the library Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, because I know that was one suggestion that staff had mentioned to me. I think if we could do Tuesdays and Wednesdays with 8 hours ending at 7 o'clock, and then the other days maybe 9 to 5. We should be able to do that with a Tuesday through Saturday with what staffing we have. It may be tight or difficult if people have vacation or need to take sick time. I'm not sure what else to do. I mean, the full-time staff do need to get their 40 hours in. And so I want to make sure that we are open enough hours for that to happen and to try to serve the community as best as possible, given the circumstances. So, our one page I know is willing to work some additional hours. She has been doing a great job and has been very flexible with that. I think that, she'd welcome the opportunity to continue to work some additional hours. But it's all going to be a matter of, kind of negotiating what the board feels like is important in terms of the hours and then what the staff are able to manage.
I have one thought. When we had the COVID emergency, everybody remembers that, yeah? If I remember correctly, our library went to just kind of parking lot pickup services, right? With just one person on staff. Is there a way that we could supplement the services that we offer outside of programming and things like that with a similar setup?
That's certainly an option. Not something that I had really considered because I know, not having been here, but having worked in other libraries such as parking lot pickup, and I know how much people don't like it because they want to be able to come in and browse and see what's there and flip through the books and do all of those things. And of course, it doesn't help people who are coming in to use the computers or people who just need a space to just be. But it is certainly an option. There are other options. One of the things that I had put in the waivers was that we could look into lockers a lot of libraries are employing lockers. They are not inexpensive, and of course, they'd have to be ordered and installed. So there would be, a period of delay in doing something like that, but that would be another option to provide people with the ability to pick up their items whenever it was convenient for them, which isn't a bad idea just in general outside of, this situation.
Personally, I agree. I think it's really important. Excuse me, my allergies are terrible right now, but for the evenings and the Saturdays to be a priority. I know that I can't get to the library during a normal workday usually, so I'm sure there's a lot of other people. I think the Saturday is huge. So however we can manage that, I think it is very important.
I also think that since we have another meeting coming up in a week, and since you have the resignation tendered, but you have 2 weeks with the individual, that does give you time to call the temp service and see if there's anything that could be tasked in a short form and what the budget might be on that. And that would be information that we could use. I did have another question. How do we use our volunteers in some of these situations? Are there tasks that they can fulfill that would assist us here?
We do use our volunteers to the fullest extent that we possibly can. Volunteers have been helping more with shelving books. They're helping us to prepare for summer reading. The philosophy in the past, and I agree with this, is that due to patron confidentiality, we can't have the volunteers on our computer systems checking people in and out, looking people up, and those kinds of things. But certainly, where we can utilize the volunteers. Our one page, we do have one page that's just starting tomorrow, so she's going to be brand new. The page who has been with us for the last year has assisted at the desk. I do wonder if there's not some way that we couldn't give her, and I don't know, this would be a question for HR, some sort of a temporary increase in salary or something, because I feel like she's making just right around minimum wage, and I feel like it's not fair to take advantage of, her willingness and ability and, not pay her what we would be paying somebody who is covering the desk. So I don't know if that's a possibility to give a temporary increase while she's, assisting with doing some of those things.
That helps. The thought that I was having on the hour question was, would it be possible for a volunteer to extend the reach while one librarian was on rather than two, to give you lunch times or to give you a little bit of spread? If it's not possible, advise me. I'm new, so let me know. But that was my thinking for this agenda item.
Well, they wouldn't be able to cover lunch if someone needed to be out at the desk. If the board is comfortable with a volunteer being the second person in the building and being responsible for any situations that might arise, then that's certainly a possibility. We do have people here for a longer period of time, but I do also have somebody on vacation from Tuesday through Saturday of next week. So I currently have myself scheduled for all of the hours that the library is open or staffed, because the staff do come in an hour before the library actually opens. So I do have myself scheduled from either 8 to 6 or 8 to 7 every day next week. And, depending on where we go and what we do, I may not even be able to leave the building to take a short break. I may have to stay in the building. And I do understand as a salaried employee that you do what it takes sometimes to make things work.
I have another suggestion when now that we're talking about hours, though, of potential hours that we could be open. If we slid our open times from Monday through Friday to start at 12 noon instead of 9 o'clock each day. And we stayed 12 to 7, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, stayed until 6, Thursday, Friday, and then a full day on Saturday. That would be 41 hours that would be open, which is just a little bit more than one full-time position. I don't know if that type of a schedule is acceptable or if it could even be possible, but
Well, we're not currently open until 7 on Mondays. Mondays we are currently closing at 6 p.m. And the issue then would be that for the staff to get the hours, they would have to work 6 days a week rather than 5. And that,
well, I'm only proposing this while we only have
sure.
you as the full-timer.
oh, sure. We still have
So
our
quite honestly, I mean, if we can get the schedule down to something that's more manageable, we can't have you working 12 hours or 10, whatever you rattled off, whatever that amounts to, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's just not doable.
Well, our children's librarian is still on the staff.
Oh, I forgot about her. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well, it might be another option if we can trim the hours per day, start a little later. But you make a good point. Thank you.
Is there anything you need from us today to help you get through the upcoming week until we can have our regular board session? Do you need to make changes now to your schedule that we need to be able to review and approve? Or are you going to be all right until we meet again?
It's hard to say. This has been a very stressful last few weeks. I'm doing the best that I can. And the staff are doing the best that they can as well. So it's hard to say, if someone were to get sick, and call out, that would totally upset the apple cart. That happened today. The staff member called out for both today and tomorrow. And with somebody else out on vacation, that is, causing it to be more difficult. Neither myself or the other full-time staff member who was there today left the building at all until I came here.
I realize that and I know it is stressful. Let me rephrase it just a little bit. Do you need us to take action on the hours today? Or would the current schedule hold with the exception of needing to, for staffing purposes, close a library because somebody was sick? You don't need to change your schedule now?
I think we could manage as best as possible next week. I don't think it's fair to the community either to not give them notice of a closure. So that is part of my concern. I would hate to see people coming to the library only to discover, during normal hours, only to discover that, there's a big sign up that we're closed.
So with that, I think that, I know that I would feel more comfortable decision-making around a change to the schedule if there were a couple of options to consider. And so understanding that the library is short-staffed at this juncture, do you feel like that is something that you can bring next week with like maybe option A, B, C?
I can, however, if it does need to go into the packet by tomorrow, because I know District Attorney Weed had asked that I have all of the information available because he is doing the agenda, and I'm still working to put together some of that information, and we'll have to, I'm going to go back to the library and pick up my computer to work from home this evening to try to gather the rest of that information so that that's available for him for the packet.
And I'll just put on the record that, this can be agendized the same way it is today for next week. And it just needs to be agendized in time. The packet and the information contained therein can be updated. It doesn't have to be the 3 business days by 9 a.m. beforehand as we normally have. And so if it's agendized this way, things can be added and updated to the packet, whether it's some sort of, options or whatever. And so we can agendize it the same way, and then it would give the board the same ability that they have today and to consider things like the board's talking about.
And is it correct? It's my understanding that so long as the information is made available to members of the board at the same time that it is made available to members of the public, then that is acceptable.
Yes, so if the agenda has been published, and obviously there's typically a packet with it, if it's provided, then it can be added to the packet, and then it would just be updated, and therefore to be available both to the public online, right, and then to the board as well at the same time.
That sounds like there's a little bit more flexibility than in the deadline. Okay, great, thank you.
Can I ask, would you like me to make these options assuming a 40-hour week open to the public, or do you want me to provide, that will help to guide me in how, giving you a variety of options for.
I think that maybe, from my perspective, I get very concerned about conversations about cutting library hours, period, dot. I worry that when you cut something, it's a lot easier to cut it and to say it's temporary and that it will be reinstated after a certain amount of time or when staffing allows, and it's a lot easier to cut things than it is to put them back. So that being said, I am not interested in saying to you, like, build the schedule this way or within these limitations. I think that there have been some interesting ideas brought up, like the idea of having parking lot pickup with just a single staff member on, and those things could potentially be used as, at the start of the day between this hour and this hour, we have parking lot pickup, and then it's open for, so I don't know that, that I don't want to put a constraint on you as far as how you can creatively approach the schedule in a way that has as little impact on patron access as possible, while also being something that is manageable, especially taking into consideration some of the temp hiring situations or potential for crossover from other county departments for overtime.
Sure. No, I understand. I'm just looking at, what we currently have, which is about 110 hours just with a brand new employee in place. And yes, there's the potential, hopefully manpower will come through and we would be able to start somebody very soon if that all works out. I'm happy to provide, like I said, to provide several different options. I just wanted to have some parameters.
Okay, so it sounds to me that this is just a discussion and that the decision-making will happen next week. Is that how others are feeling? Okay.
It sounds like that is the direction that we can go unless there is an emergency situation, right? Okay. That gives us a chance to review a variety of variables and some material that you'll have time to bring to us. And it also, our help is available to you. So if you need to task us in any of the calls or help you in gathering information, we're happy to do so.
I think we could also bring some suggestions ourselves for discussion. We don't have to dump it all on CL, do we? Maybe if we've collectively, like Ashley said about COVID hours, so maybe thinking about more of those things too would help. Because you weren't here for COVID, so you didn't know what we did.
I just also feel like if library hours and patron access is certainly something that I feel like our patrons and our public care very deeply about. And so if we were to decide that we were going to be making a decision at this juncture, I would want to make sure to open it up for public comment to hear additional perspectives from patrons and from the community who will ultimately be impacted.
That's a good point, because we might not even be able to resolve it next week. You know, as a board, like to actually vote on something to say, okay, here's what we're going to do.
All right, are there any other thoughts about item 7C, consideration and possible action with the discussion about library schedule and hours? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the segment of public comment at the end of our agenda. Again, if you are interested in coming and making public comment, please come up to one of the chairs with a microphone that works. Touch the little microphone icon, it'll turn green. Please state your name for the record, and public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person.
Hello again. So this is considering something else, and I was just talking to Zip Up. Being from a military, and I would always have the sailors come in to help volunteer. I was just wondering if we could look into that. And some of them might even want to volunteer a lot of their time. You just never know, but I would be willing to even ask them with somebody if you'd like. I have a good rapport with them out there. Also, high school students or OASIS students, they have to do community service. Did anybody look into that prospect? And I could help with that also, being a community involvement person and with the Fallon Youth Club even. The other thing was, I know there was an individual that talked about security, and she was safety with the kids getting out of school and causing havoc at the library itself. What's the safety officer at the at the middle school? I think they have one at the high school too. Could they just drive by? Could they check in, see if things are okay? There's no way you can expect two people at the library trying to adjust all that. So that would be my guidance, and hopefully you can look into that and we can solve a few matters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Caitlin Hansen. We can talk as much as you would like about cutting hours and whatnot to try and make the library work, but I think the real issue is, why is there a mass exodus of employees? There's been 5 employees to leave since the beginning of this year, leaving only 3 left, including CL. I think that is the main issue that needs to be discussed and resolved. If we don't have employees leaving, we're not having an issue with the hours that the library is open. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Doris Dwyer, retired professor of history at WNC and former library board member. I would like to return to agenda item 7A. Some of my concerns.
Doris, your microphone was just turned off. If you could just touch the little icon. Yep, perfect, you got it.
Is it on? Okay. I did review the videotape of the last board meeting so that I would have some background about this. And I'm concerned, again, I'm on agenda 7A, item 7A. I was concerned with the anonymity of so many of these comments. 2 of the board members at the last meeting did refer to a number of communications that they had received. And Kelly was more specific. She said there were Churchill County Department comments that you had received.
Sorry, I think
Yeah.
you keep hitting it with your thumb there. It's the little light. So if you touch the light, and it'll note the light on the base. There's a little red light.
Got it?
There you go. And so don't touch the
Okay.
green light. Yeah.
I would hope that these people that are contacting board members would be encouraged by the board members to attach their names to the comments that they have, because I'm very concerned. The stakes are very high for CL, and I don't think anonymous comments should be considered in any shape or form. Now, part of my concern was addressed with some of the public comments that I've read, but the ones that I had access to today, there was no consensus by any means on this issue. My other concern is the speed with which this has come up, and I hope that I have the timeline right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the CL's probationary period was 1 year, and the evaluation is based on that year, and it seems like most of these comments have come in after the probationary period. Am I right?
I'm sorry, we're limited. We can't, you have the opportunity to make public
Well,
comment, but we don't
it-
respond.
these comments that are coming in now should be considered in the next evaluation, because the first evaluation is based on her first year, and these comments seem to be coming in after that. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I didn't hear everything. I don't have my hearing aid, sorry, but is there going to be a reconsideration of this 7A issue, or are you going into closed session? Because I couldn't hear.
So as earlier, our DA's office representative identified that these conversations are mandated by statute to happen in an open public meeting.
Session.
Yes, and so we removed item 7A from the agenda, and we'll be considering that next week at the May 16th meeting, which the meeting is May 16th at 3:00 p.m. Is there anyone else who is interested in making public comment at this juncture? With that, I would just like to say to everyone here, to all the members of the board, to folks watching online, that thank you. That I know that while our opinions might vary, we are all here because we care about the library deeply, and that is something that's occurred to me very strongly over the last few weeks. So I will call us adjourned. Thank you all.